Tonight, I want to welcome Sandra von Arb and Kathy Biggs, who I've known electronically for several years, and together they have gotten me excited, charged up about dragonflies for all kinds of reasons. They're beautiful, they're active during the hottest time of the day when birds are usually less active. So it makes a perfect choice for birders who want to continue their birding, who want to continue their observations and their outdoor time when the birds have gone in for a siesta. They have published together a brand new revised edition of the book, Dragonflies of California. And this is part of my not so trivial library of dragonfly books, which you can see. This takes up a significant part of my bookshelf, and my favorite books have always been Kathy's and Sandra's. I would point out kind of proudly that I have the first copy that was sold of Dragonflies of the Greater Southwest, and Kathy said, "This is copy number 1." So very excited. So
still have 50 left.
I might. Do you have a volume discount? We might like to put some in our nature shop. But
yeah. Yes, we'll talk about that later.
Excellent. So anyway, I don't want to take up any more time except to tell you how much I love this subject and how excited I am that you're both here. And I want to hand over the controls so you can go ahead and pull up your presentation and give any further introductions to yourselves. And by all means, let us know about your brand new book and how we can get it and how it'll help.
And this is Sandra, and I'm Kathy, just so there's no confusion.
Okay, great.
All right, here we go. Share.
Yeah, there we go. So can you guys hear us okay?
Yes, we can hear you. They're just popped up. Wonderful.
Great. So it's really nice to get to kind of see what you look like, Matthew, after all of these years of seeing you on Western Nodonata and through emails. So we're delighted to be talking about the dragonflies in California, and we're going to concentrate on the Bay Area, and at the end we'll be showing you some species that are found here. So Sandra, do you want to go through and tell the audience about what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, so just for a quick outline, we're going to talk about the beauty of dragonflies because they're absolutely gorgeous. We're going to do a little bit of anatomy and biology, what they need, their role in the environment, and then we're going to do a quick introduction to some of the more common species in the Bay Area, and then some of the resources that you can use.
So dragonflies, as Matthew mentioned, are absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. I'm not prejudiced at all. They come in all the colors of the rainbows. There's orange ones, there's blue ones, there's green ones, and if you go down south, there are pink ones. And if you go up north, there are even some with metallic hues. Most dragonflies have clear wings, but there are some with colored wings. And the patterns really help with identifying them. And we'll be going over what marks you need to use for that soon. There are dragonflies with very curvy bodies, and they can do some amazing things, both in their flight and in their life cycle. So Sandra's going to talk to you about the parts you need to know of a dragonfly, give you the vocabulary.
Yes, so just like with birds, we need to know the different pieces so that when we talk about where we see things, that whether it's color or pattern or anything like that, we know what we're talking about. So first of all, dragonflies are insects, so they have 3 parts. They have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, and the abdomen always has 10 segments, plus some appendages here at the end. The face is often called the frons, or that's actually the technical term, and the mouth would be down here. And then they have massive eyes. And then on their thorax, they have 6 legs and 4 independently muscled wings. And then on the abdomen, we talk a lot about what colors or patterns or things are on particular segments. So it's always good to be able to know how to count them. But what I'll tell you is the majority of the talk is in these higher numbers. And although it may seem like it's obvious, do remember that it's easier to count 10, 9, 8 than to count from 1, 2, 3, because segment 1 is almost impossible to see. And then on the wings, we have the notice. We talk about whether there's color on the left, up to the notice or past the notice a lot. And then every wing has a stigma. And we talk about sometimes the color or how long it is or things like that.
So there's an issue with vocabulary. So in science speak, we have the order Odonata, and then there are two suborders, the Anisoptera and the Zygoptera. This is a lot like butterflies and moths. But in English vocabulary, there's the order dragonflies, and then two suborders, dragonflies and damselflies. As you can see, there's only 2 words here as opposed to 3. So for our talk, we're going to be using the order name of Odonats, or Odes for short, and we want to encourage you to do the same when you're talking about both. So the head is mostly eyes. They have big, huge eyes. If our eyes were that big, they'd be like this, and I'm assuming you can see me, and Sandra always says bigger. Whoops, I went too fast. Their eyes are so large in most species, they actually form a seam here. They have these big eyes because they are predators. These are not nectar sippers. They are out eating. They're kind of like our hawks, always on the wing catching things. And the eye has 30,000 facets. You've seen pictures maybe of a housefly's eye, which has only 4,000, so way more. They're able to detect a flicker at least twice as fast as our eyes can. And I swear, when I am doing research and have to net one, if I tighten my hand on the net, it knows it.
Oh, yeah.
They're also able to see both polarized and ultraviolet light. So what they see in each other is not what we see in them. So here's a picture of the dragonfly face, and each of these dark spots is a focal point. And then this shows this area expanded around one of the focal points and gives you an idea of all the different facets. So this head gives them pretty much 360-degree vision. They can see in front of themselves, above themselves, below themselves, and to each side, all at the same time. The one area where they don't see as well is directly behind them. And so if you're approaching them to get a picture, sometimes coming from that angle is the best bet. And some even have built-in sunglasses. Think about it, they're out flying in the sun all the time, so they have evolved sunglasses. And the head has no nose. I once, in the beginning years, knocked the head off one when I caught it. I decided to take it home and show my husband. This is before he retired. I brought it from Sacramento to Sebastopol, a 2.5-hour drive, and it was still alive. That night when we went to bed, it was still alive. We put it on the bathroom counter. The next day, it was still alive. That went on for 3 days. We couldn't stand it. We put it in the freezer and froze it. But it would have stayed alive actually until it froze to death. It couldn't fly. It couldn't do anything, but it was alive. And the mouth is situated below the eyes. And can they bite? Well, of course, they're predators. But a dragonfly will never land on you to bite you. That will not happen. In fact, this is about the only way we can get them to bite us. And I can tell you right now that when we do this, the children line up ahead of the parents. Here you can see that the dragonfly is being held by its wings. Their wings are made out of material that's similar to our fingernails. They're not like butterflies. You will not damage them holding them by their wings. And if you want to know what a dragonfly bite feels like, take your finger and give it a swift pinch on the side. So enough to startle you and make you drop it, hopefully. And the dragonflies, they eat the most dangerous animal in the whole world. Yes, mosquitoes. Think about malaria, dengue fever, West Nile disease, Zika, and more diseases. They're not a nice thing to have around. So the dragonflies are out there eating them. It's one of their preferred food sources. That picture is from a page in our coloring book. Tim Manolis and I did this. I asked him to draw the last thing a mosquito saw before a dragonfly grabbed it. So here's your green darner with the multiple focal points. And here you can see why they're called odonata. Here's their teeth. They're not like our teeth, they're more serrations, but they do chew their food. They don't suck it. So this coloring book is for your child, your grandchild, or your inner child, and it is available on Amazon. I don't have any personal copies at the moment. And then in art, dragonflies have cute curly cues. Let's see. Here's on your shirt, does my necklace? Nope. Okay, we tend to gravitate to things that are right. So the antenna, when I first gave this talk 20 years ago, and believe me, it wasn't Zoom back then, we didn't know what the function was. And then I learned that the function is sort of like a speedometer. It helps them gauge their speed, but Sandra can expound on that.
Yeah, so now we're finding out that they're chemoreceptors, especially in the aquatic form, but it seems that is extended also in the aerial form. So we're still learning a lot about dragonflies, so there's always more to find out.
That's part of the joy of dragonflying. The head is very loosely attached to the body, so you can kind of see how I could have accidentally knocked the head off of it. When you are doing research and you need to net them, remember, they're not baseballs. Treat them gently. Sandra, do you want to talk about the thorax?
Sure. The thorax is literally the powerhouse of the dragonfly. They have massive muscles there that move the wings independently. And it also holds a spherical, which there are some throughout the body in different places, but the spherical is how dragonflies breathe. So remember when Kathy broke the head off, it was still breathing through these sphericals, and they don't have a central nervous system like other animals do. So that's why it could live. And as she said, they live until they starve to death, unless you freeze them. So next. Yeah. Oh, slide's not going. There we go. So all four wings are attached to the thorax, and they're individually muscled and can move independently. And they can also do that same figure-8 pattern that hummingbirds do. And you know that hummingbirds have this great acrobatic ability because of that. And now imagine them with 4 wings instead of 2. They are solar powered. They need to warm up in order to be able to fly. And while some of the larger species do have a shivering mechanism to help warm them up or maybe stay out a little longer when it tends to get cool, the majority of them do need to come out in the sun to have any meaningful movement every day. So here in the thorax, we also have 6 legs. And every once in a while, they'll look like they only have 4, but they're using the 2 forelegs as kind of like protectors of their eyes. Again, their eyes are just so important for to make their living, both to keep watch for potential predators such as birds, but also so that they can see their prey so they can eat. So they take great care of their eyes. And here you can see they also clean their eyes using their 4 wings or 4 legs. And it's just amazing. They can really get all the way around their eyes like that. So the wings, again, they have 4 wings independently muscled.
They don't really fly like that.
No, not really. And so they can fly forwards, backwards, up, down, hover, upside down. They can do these beautiful acrobatic twists and dips. And the military has been trying to copy this for years. They've put them in flight chambers and all sorts of things and have not been able to duplicate their abilities. And, well, we kind of hope it stays that way. Their wings are strong. And as Kathy said before, that's how we hold them. The only time that they are weak is when they first emerge and they haven't dried up yet. So when they kind of look shiny and look a little bit like cellophane, That means they're not done drying, and then you shouldn't hold them. But after that point, it is really the best way to hold them if you need to hold them. So here you can kind of see the independent movement of those wings. And then this is part of the breathing system. When they're flying, it kind of acts like a diaphragm. And so they're getting the maximum amount of oxygen at the exact time that they need the most oxygen to fly.
So I'm going to talk to you about the abdomen, sometimes referred to as the tail, and always numbered from the head to the appendages with 10 segments. And each joint is loosely connected. They need to be able to move their abdomens up, down, to the side, both in their biology and in their hunting. Females have 2 appendages at the end, and either a flange or an ovipositor for laying eggs. Well, and these are not stingers. Therefore, a dragonfly cannot sting you. So they don't bite and they don't sting. They are very beneficial with eating mosquitoes. So the male has a 3rd appendage underneath and a bump under his 2nd segment. So this slide shows this bump a little better. And Sandra and I like to think of that as a Swiss Army knife. He has many tools, and we'll be explaining the function of some of his more unusual tools as we go along. So every dragonfly species has a unique shape to their appendages, and especially in the darners like this one, that shape is very important in making an ID. But the main thing is that this is how he hooks up with the female. So although a male dragonfly secretes his sperm here, he has to move it up into this little Swiss Army knife to be able to mate with her. And courtship is very brief. It's kind of caveman-like. But if he's the right species, his appendages fit perfectly with her. And she says, "Oh, isn't this lovely?" Or something like that. Oops, I went too far. Sandra.
All right, so with that lead in, we'll start with the dragonfly life cycle. We'll start with the eggs, which are laid in water. And dragonflies, the majority of their lifespan is spent in the water. And that can be weeks to months to even years. And then the aerial form is only weeks to months. Once they lay their eggs, they'll hatch sometimes right away, sometimes after a winter, and they'll become nymph, where they go through 14 to 17 stages or instars. Then when they're ready, they'll climb up some vegetation or maybe on a rock and emerge. And this process is loosely like butterflies, except they don't have that middle cocoon stage. And then they'll go off and fly, go feed, forage, and grow, make their eggs and mature, and then they'll come back to the water and lay their eggs again. So here we have two dragonflies in what we call in tandem. So he has joined up with the female. The female is always in the back, and they are joined behind the eyes. And here's a much close up. So this is why those appendages act like a lock and key, and they have to fit. And there are a few species that maybe can crossbreed, but it happens very, very rarely in dragonflies. Once she accepts him, she will move her abdomen forward and hook up to that little bump that we talked about. And there, that little Swiss Army knife, as you would say, is used to actually scoop out the sperm from any previous matings before putting his sperm in. And so every once in a while, when you see them perched like this, you'll see them do a little shimmy, shimmy. And that's kind of what's happening at that point. And they also are the only insects that create this wheel along with the damselflies in the order Odonata. As usually, most insects go end to end, but they can fly together this way.
truly flying united.
Yep. So once they're done with the mating process, they'll come back and start egg laying. And in skimmers, the male keeps hold of the female and kind of swings her down so that the abdomen tip hits the water, and she'll drop a bunch of eggs all at the same time over and over again. And they really like to have some of this vegetation, or what we sometimes call muck, on the ponds to lay in. And that's partly for protection from fish. And sometimes they use hover guarding. So that, as you can imagine, since they take the previous male sperm out before putting their sperm in, they also then need to protect that not another male comes in after and grabs the female. So they do tend to guard the females in one way or another. Here's a female with eggs. You can kind of see it extruding here, so that when she taps, this is what would then go into the water. And here's a mass of eggs. This is, for size reference, this is duckweed, these little green leafed plants. And every single one of these little dots, whether white or black, which is based on age, is an egg. Once they hatch, again, they become nymph, where they forage. They are carnivores in this stage as well. And they have this very specialized lower jaw, which jets out and catches their prey and brings it back to their mouth. So once the nymph get large enough, they will emerge. They will go up and down stems or find the right rock, depending on the species, and grab onto the vegetation, and then they'll split their backs open and push themselves out. They'll hang there for a little while the exoskeleton dries, so that they can then bring themselves up and pull their abdomen out. And then from this point forward, it's very similar to butterflies, where the hemolymph expands and also fills their wings. And you right here, this is their wings at this stage here. So here it's already getting larger and larger. You can see the wings are starting to unfurl and come out. And then for a brief moment, they'll hold their wings together over their back. And ta-da! So when they first emerge, they're still soft. They're very poor flyers, and they are not in their final color either. So young dragonflies still need to do what we call coloring up. And this whole process can take 15, 20 minutes, all the way up to several hours, depending on species, temperature, humidity, all of that good stuff. And that is when they are their most vulnerable. Thank you. Where the birds just go absolutely nuts. The fat content on these is extremely high, and so they're a great caloric and vitamin food source for birds, especially the nestlings. Oh, click.
So the difference between dragonflies and damselflies, think of a dragonfly as about the size of your pinky or maybe your child's pinky, and they hold their wings out flat or maybe down and forward. They're seen usually flying up in the sky, catching flying insects, and their forewing and their hind wing are differently shaped. Then the damselflies, think of them as a matchstick or even a needle. Their forewing and their hind wing are shaped the same, and they'll be flitting about at about knee height. They're more like warblers. They'll be gleaning insects off of plant matter and sometimes spider webs. So damselflies have this hammer-headed appearance compared to our dragonflies with their big, huge eyes. And the one family, the clubtails, that have their eyes somewhat separated, the distance between the eyes is less than the actual width of any individual eye. Yeah, I can talk. Anyway, the difference also, the clasping point between dragonflies and damselflies is different. The damselflies have a thing like a neck called a prothorax, and there's indentations on it that fit perfectly with the male's fore appendages. And dragonflies, as we've said, are carnivores, not nectar sippers. They eat things like yellow jackets. This is a Pacific spiketail, and it's just finishing eating a yellow jacket. They also eat mosquitoes, as we mentioned, whiteflies, aphids, any other flying pests, and other insects. Will they eat a butterfly? Yes, they will, but it's very rare. In the 26 years I've been watching dragonflies, I've seen it one time.
And I've never seen
And
it.
you've never seen it. Okay. And the damselflies, again, are gleaning insects, more down at knee height. And all dragonflies have the aquatic nymphal stage, even though they evolved from being totally terrestrial animals, which is just mind-blowing. So they need water to breed in, and the different families use different waters. Some go to lowland lakes. Some of you may recognize this one. Others prefer highland lakes. Some prefer rushing waters, and some like slow waters or creeks, bogs and fens, and garden ponds. This is my garden pond. This is what got me into dragonflies. A flame skimmer showed up, and I went to look it up and discovered there were no books for identifying dragonflies, and the California Insect Guide at that point only had 7 species in it. So that's why I took off. So who eats dragonflies? Well, our beloved birds do. And this Mark Barsk has a whole website of birds eating dragonflies. This is a red saddlebags, and it's been grabbed by the eyeballs, the juiciest part. Most animals who eat dragonflies start with the eyes. But they don't only eat the flying dragonflies. They also go to the marshes and ponds and rivers and find the nymph. This is the nymph of the common green darner. We're seeing its underside. And there's that lower lip here that it uses to jut out. Well, frogs try to. We'll let this guy give up. And here in my own backyard, I discovered that the orb weaver spiders can eat a dragonfly. I don't think she needed another meal for the rest of her life. Sometimes other dragonflies too. The pond hawk is a specialist on other dragonflies. Sometimes it's a mystery. They have many known predators: fish, turtles, spiders, frogs. One of their greatest predators used to be cars, but our cars are better designed now. And I haven't found a dragonfly on my windshield in quite a while. But habitat loss and change, including global warming, or I prefer to say global weirding, is a great danger. Think of the droughts where the ponds dry out, the rivers shrink and slow down. And then think of our torrential rains where everything gets washed out. Those can be very difficult for dragonflies. But remember, they've been here 300 million years. I think they'll survive. Sandra's going to talk to you about migration.
Great. And so many people don't know that dragonflies migrate. Those that do a lot of hawk watching might know as the the falcons are often seen grabbing dragonflies during their migration, as in this individual here. So this is the common green darner. It's the most well-known, one of the most well-known dragonflies that migrates. And they make a real tasty meal for a kestrel.
He's got his fast food.
So I like to talk a little bit about migration and where it started. This isn't in any books or anything, but dragonflies have been gracing our planet for over 300 million years. So at the time where Pangea was still a thing, and as the continents migrated themselves, you can just think of the dragonflies migrating, and we know that dragonflies are food for probably dinosaurs at the time and eventually birds, and they probably were chasing the dragonflies that were moving about and migrating. So I posit that it's a very good chance that the dragonflies and other insects taught birds to migrate. So here's a staging area of a common green darner during migration. That usually happens around September in our area. And every single one of these little white dots, Kathy started circling them, but that was futile because every single little white dot that looks like haze in here is actually a dragonfly.
There had to be at least 300.
Oh, I think more.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they'll stage for a couple days and then continue on, and then they'll stage again and continue on. Migration research is at its infancy. The first ones were done with a Cessna airplane, and they followed them for a few days on the East Coast. But more recently, I was able to be part of a research group where we were looking for a feasibility study to actually tag dragonflies. We did this in 2023. We attached MODIS tags, which you may be familiar with. They also use those on birds. So they made super tiny ones. We had glue issues, we had size issues, we had weight concerns, and so we decided at that point that it was a no-go. But we came back the next year and we found out about these blue morpho tags, which is Bluetooth technology. And we tried those again. They're lighter, they're smaller, they have solar options. And you can remember we talked about dragonflies being solar and needing to be out in the sun to warm up every day. So that makes a solar option a very enticing, as they can last as long as the dragonflies last at that point. And we fixed the glue issue, and we decided that this process is feasible, especially as the technology continues to advance. And then I just wanted to do touch quickly on the longest insect migration in the world is with a dragonfly. And there's a really wonderful TED Talk. It's about 16 years old now, but I really recommend it. It's absolutely a stunning story of how they figured this out. And so I encourage you to go look.
So the Bay Area has 58 of the 114 species found in California. So the dragonflies, there are 7 different families, and there are 33 different species. And the damselflies, there are 3 families, and there are about 25 different species. I'm going to start off talking to you about the skimmers. What's nice about the skimmers is that they perch. In fact, you can even put, you might try this, Matthew. Try putting a stick out in a waterway, and then you aim at it, and when a dragonfly lands, you click the camera. That works very nicely. So there are 9 Bay Area genera with 19 species. This one is the variegated meadowhawk. On your Christmas count, you may see this one. It is one of the migratory dragonflies. And 2 very common, often seen on iNaturalist, are the flame skimmer, Libellula saturata, saturated with color. Every single piece of this dragonfly is flame colored, flame orange colored. I guess in New Mexico, they used to call it the firecracker. Yep. I think that was cute. So when I first started, I had a hard time telling the difference between it and this cardinal meadowhawk. But as birders, you've developed good eyes for seeing colors. And you probably can tell the difference. These flowers I've tried to keep the same size. The flame skimmer is a libellula. They hold their wings out flat. The cardinal meadowhawk, like the variegated meadowhawk, is in the Sympetrum family, and they like to hold their wings down and forward when they're at rest.
And the white spot.
Oh, go back and talk about the white spot. And they have a white spot often obscured by the wings. So look for that white spot. You may have to look hard to see it. And if it's in the shade, good luck. And then there's the blue dasher. And all of the skimmers with this blue coloration, it's actually called prunosity, and it develops as they mature. So when they first emerge, it's much like with the birds, a young male blue dasher will look like a female. She's actually kind of a brown plaid color, but then he develops this prunosity. But ladies, it's like we could develop our own fingernail polish. And then there's the Western Pondok. Had my first one at the pond today. Yay, yay. And the female and the young male are all green. And then it develops this blue prunosity from the tail end up. They're really pretty when this part is blue, this part is green, and then this part does become blue as it matures, but the face always stays green, while the dasher's face always stays white. And you just have to hope that they perch facing you, because otherwise sometimes it can be difficult to tell. And then a study in contrast here. Here's the black saddlebags. My cousin calls him the Harley rider and named saddlebags because it looks like he's got saddlebags. And this is the common whitetail because he's got a white tail. They were named by committee in 1996, given common names, and I think they did a great job. This white color is also prunosity. And what you can see, well, I better go backwards because I skipped something. I'm going backward. This is a studly guy. See those dark spots? He has mated with so many females who have then grabbed him that they've shined his wax. Okay, carrying on. These two can be hard to tell apart, especially in flight, although you with experience can get there. This is the 12 spotted skimmer. 3 dark spots times 4 wings is 12. The 8 spotted skimmer, 2 dark spots times 4 is 8. You can tell I used to teach elementary school. The difference at a quick glance is to compare the wingtips. Is it clear or is it colored? And again, this is prunosity on both of these males, and they both seem to be pretty studly guys. Look at them. Looks pretty studly to me. So they're beautiful. This one's Libellula pucella. Pucella actually means pretty or beautiful. And then if you go up in the mountains, there are still different species. There's the white-faced meadowhawk. There's the saffron-winged meadowhawk. There's the black meadowhawk. And there's the chalk-fronted corporal. And then if you go into the desert areas, there's the Mexican amberwing, the not common whitetail. This is the desert whitetail. It has much more white in its wings. The roseate skimmer and the very beautiful filigree skimmer. No colors, just browns, earth tones, but it has striped eyes, a chevron down its abdomen, and lacy wings. So, Sandra, you want to go on with some of the other species?
Sure. So next we have the emerald family. We have one in the whole entire Bay Area. So when you see a dragonfly with these dramatically greenish blue eyes, well, that's your guy. They don't have much color as a family, but this is one of the more colorful ones with brown with a little bit of yellow. Again, these eyes can, depending on the lighting, can go from green to blue, but usually it's somewhere in between. They're very common along lakes, and they fly in linear patterns along the paths quite often. We also have the darner family. This again is the common green darner. These are the bigger species of dragonflies. And darn it, this is about all you get to ever see of them. They can be really difficult. If you're lucky, you'll see them perched, as in these couple of photos. Here we have the blue-eyed darner and the California darner. These are the 2 first species of darner to come here in the season. I've only seen California darner so far this year. How about you, Kathy?
Me too.
All right. So they look very similar. The blue-eyed darner much bluer. The California darner maybe more of a light blue, but that can be hard to tell depending on lighting. But one of the main ways to tell the difference is the shape of these appendages. This one has a forked key-like appendage, and the California darner is a very simple version of that. And then here are the females. The females tend to have more of a greenish to yellow coloration and are much harder to tell apart.
But our book has a whole chart that helps you.
Yep, absolutely. And they do also have an andromorph variety, which looks blue like the males. So they like to wear a lot of pretty dresses. The shadow darner I mentioned because that's more of a late season species, much more drab, more in the yellow-green coloration on top of the brown. But if you ever end up with a large dragonfly in your house, 99 times out of 100, it will be this one. They are willing to fly in shade and shadows, including going into culverts. And so they're willing to go into the darkness of a house. And if you do get that, just open your door and kind of swish them in that direction. They'll be fine. Again, here we have the common green darner. They are all green up top, blue in the abdomen or tail. Sometimes that can be a little bit purple. This color can change with temperature. And then they have the beautiful green eyes and this bullseye. If you are in the Bay Area, this bullseye is diagnostic. Further south and southeast of here, there are other species, but here it's diagnostic.
And usually seen in flight.
Yep, usually seen in flight, correct. And they are considered the Lord and King of Junes. They almost like the beginning of darner season is when these guys really come out. June is when these guys just come out in huge numbers, and it kind of signals the true beginning of dragonfly season. We have dragonflies that start in April or so, but there's just few of them. And once June hits, boy, there's just dragonflies everywhere.
And we're almost there.
Almost.
So I'm going to talk to you about the clubtails. They're mostly found on moving water, and they're called clubtails because, well, their abdomen has this clubbed appearance. There are 4 genera in the Bay Area and 4 species. I'm going to introduce you to them. So this is the gray sand dragon. You need to be on a river to see this species. This is the male with his clubbed appendage, and this is the female. She does not have a clubbed appendage. And this species, you look for the gray on the side of the thorax, the gray eyes, and these points down his abdomen. Then there's the grapple tail. Instead of being clubbed, he has these grapple-shaped appendages. The female doesn't. Usually the females have thicker bodies. They need to hold their eggs. And this one is found at very small water bodies with lots of vegetation. So even found in seeps. And in this guy is the bison snaketail. Doesn't this look like a snake's head and tail? Yeah, there are several different kinds of snaketails in California, but in the Bay Area, the only one we have is the bison. He's got this green on the side of the thorax and a pretty thick line here. And if we had a picture of a female, they are named bison snaketails because they actually have tiny little horns.
Yep.
It's hard to see. And then there's the Pacific clubtail. He's found on both rivers and lakes. And this is the male and the female. And the main way to tell it apart from the bison is to look at segment 10 and the appendages. He's black here. If we go back to the bison snaketail, it's yellow on 10 and the top of the appendages. And then there's the mixed families. They're actually not related at all, but I group them together in our book and here in the presentation because they're black and yellow. And there are 3 genera, each with only 1 species here in California. So whoops, how did I get that number 2? Oh, okay. This is the Pacific spiketail, named for the spike the female has there. And she uses that spike like a sewing machine to go up and down in the mud on the side of rivers, putting her eggs there. They have beautiful blue eyes and 2 stripes on the side of the thorax. That's to compare them with the Western River cruiser. He has gray eyes and 1 stripe on the side of the thorax. And he almost has a clubbed look to his appendage. His scientific name, Macromia magnifica, whoever named him thinks the same as I do. When you're in a river and this comes flying by you, it's just really magnificent. And then the 3rd species is the black petaltail. This is the most ancient surviving species here in the West. It does not breed in water. It breeds in damp places. And it doesn't have stripes. It has dots on the side of the thorax. So, Sandra, do we have time for damselflies?
I think we're going to have to make it quick.
Okay, take it.
So for damselflies, which are not covered in our book, but they're part of the odonats, so we like to at least cover it a little bit. Again, these are tiny, the size of needles most of the time, and you really do have to look hard for them. We have 3 families. We have the pond damsel family. We have 6 Bay Area genera and 18 species. They tend to be blue and black in general. So first we have the dancers. They are the larger of the damselflies and are blue and black again, sometimes purple depending on temperature. And the females tend to be brown, but they hold their wings slightly above their abdomen, like dancers hold their arms away from their bodies. And then we have the bluets, which are blue and black, and they hold their wings down across their abdomen. We also have the forktails, which are tiny. They tend to be greenish in the front with a blue tip, so it looks like green, black, blue, or blue, black, blue. And then the firetails and red damsels are the red versions. And all of these are absolutely tiny. You have to get practically on your hands and knees to see them sometimes.
And then there's the exclamation damsel, which is my totem damsel, but you can see it has exclamation marks on top of the thorax. And I got to help give them their common name. So we'll skip all the rest about that. Then there's spread wings. And as you would maybe think, they spread their wings. There are only 2 genus in the Bay Area. They're the pond damsels and the stream spread wings. The pond damsels are smaller and hold their wings kind of delta style, while the stream spread wings hold their wings out flat. The very largest one in all of North America occurs here in the Bay Area. This is the great spread wing, Archelestes grandis. And then the last one we want to introduce you to is the broadwing family. There's only 2 genus in the state and only 1 species in the Bay Area. The ruby spot has this pretty color in its wings. And if you can see the inside of the wings, they're just drop dead gorgeous. So that's our quick introduction to the dragonflies.
And then, of course, we have our guidebook. It includes all 73 species in California. We have large photos of both the males and the females. We have descriptions of their habitat and what characteristics to look for. And we have the spiral bound edition available on our website and the perfect standard bound available on Amazon. Other guidebooks that you might want to see are
Dennis Paulson's. He's my mentor. I'll take over. Yep, he's my mentor. He has a fantastic book. It's large. It's 537 pages. It describes every segment of every single dragonfly in detail. So if you want to know all that, this is the book to get. By the way, these 2 are not the same species. So sometimes the pages split a species images. It's a great book if you're really getting into them, but we recommend our book over it for beginners. You want to talk about Ed's book?
Sure. Ed's book just came out last October. We've been waiting for years for him. He has beautiful art and he has beautiful details. It covers all 329 species in North America and is very, very detailed. So also, if you're really going to get into dragonflies in detail, this is also one to get. If you're going to be doing most of your dragonfly looking or searching in California, we also recommend our book partly because you don't have to weed out all the species that you're not going to see.
That might look very similar to the ones you're seeing.
That's correct. It only has a quarter of the book is covers California species. So the 3/4 of the book are species that you're not going to see.
So then web resources. Odonata Central is created just for dragonflies. It's where we want all county records, new flight data records, expansions, all of that we want to go onto Odonata Central. And luckily, a lot of what's on iNaturalist is now being
Uploaded into
Odonata Central. But if you make a record on iNaturalist, that I will probably be the one who tells you, would you please put that up on Odonata Central also? So iNaturalist is a great resource. You're probably using iBird, but for anything else, iNaturalist is where you ought to go. I also have a California Dragonflies and Damselflies website. This is it up at the top, and it's extensive. I have dozens of pictures of every species. I've got maps, etc. And Sandra has started the Western Odonata Facebook group.
It's over 10 years old now.
Oh, my goodness. So we're offering this book at a discount. Oh, I didn't do that yet. So give me about 5 minutes when this program ends, and then I will put the discount up on the book. So I think that's the end of our program.
It is.
So if there are questions,
Fantastic, you two. I've got a couple of questions. There are already some comments in the chat, but I'm just dying to get my questions out. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I cannot recommend your books highly enough, specifically because, or particularly because the area is smaller. And for beginners especially, it's really nice to have a California specific book. And you've done a wonderful job with that. So I had a question a few years ago, after studying your books, and noticing that red saddlebags was generally found to our south. And then on one of my bird field trips, we had a red saddlebag show up at Sanborn Park on a small reservoir there. And then I found it again in a couple of other places. So it got me thinking about what would bring that sort of southerly species up here. And I have dreams perhaps of finding giant darner or filigree skimmer up here at some point, roseate skimmer, which is one of my absolute favorites. What species are you kind of looking for as far as expanding northward?
well, we took the slide out about the red saddlebag migration up north.
We had a migration event for red saddlebags. They follow storms. And so we had this really freak storm about, I don't know, was it 10 years ago or so? And they went all the way into Oregon that year. But we tracked them and they weren't breeding. So they weren't ready yet up there for the climate wise.
They may have tried, but they were not successful.
Right. They were not successful. They couldn't complete the life cycle.
Except in Sonoma County.
Oh, yeah. Except in Sonoma County. So we do have red saddlebags now in Sonoma County. Still not in high numbers, but they are here. And roseate skimmers are slowly going north. We have them as far north, I think, as Monterey County now. So they're edging up. And as climate change happens and things in times get warmer, we also have warmer temperatures here in the summer. So some of these Southern California type dragonflies are heading northward. And interestingly enough, we also have dragonfly species moving southward. And so actually Northern California is in a great place to be getting some southern species showing up as well as some northern species showing up. So hold tight and keep looking.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do have dreams of filigree skimmer at some point. I've never seen one. And the other thing the other species that's eluded me is gray sand dragon. Year after year, I keep saying, this is the year I'm going to find gray sand dragon. And I just never have. But it'll happen at some point.
Maybe the Carmel River.
Carmel River?
Yeah, I'm guessing that'd be a closer place for you to look.
Check iNaturalist, see where they're at, and go there.
Definitely will. Okay, so why do dragonflies go through so many instars? Is this to get bigger? Thanks. And that's from a Zoom user.
So two things. To get bigger, yes, it's just kind of like crab. As they grow, they fill the inside of their exoskeleton, which does not grow. And so they have to get a new exoskeleton so that they can grow further. And then they don't grow their wings, for example, until about instar, I think it's 6 or 7. So they go through, they don't have a pupal stage like butterflies do. So they do a lot of this transformation to be ready to become an aerial species at different points of their instars.
Okay, great. Thank you. And from YDK, how would you encourage dragonflies in your yard? Having ponds is one way, I guess, but then that could be an invitation to mosquitoes as well. And we don't really want to encourage mosquitoes, I wouldn't think.
Right. And what I found is I actually have a 300-gallon stock tank, which is not ideal, but works great. If you put, if I hang baskets on the edges so that I get some good emergent pond vegetation. But what I found is that if you build an ecosystem, the mosquito problem goes away. You have dragonflies, diving beetles, all sorts of things eating the mosquitoes. So focus on as big of a water body as you can get, and focus on getting a really good ecosystem growing in there.
Emergent vegetation is important.
Crucial.
Mhm.
Crucial.
And I don't have a mosquito problem. I've had my pond now for 24 years, and I didn't really expect this to happen, but the mosquito problem disappeared as my dragonfly population grew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I do hope that you'll give a presentation sometime about how you built your pond and recommendations you have for other people.
Right. Really quick though, before we move on to the next question, another way that you can attract dragonflies is if you're near a pond or marsh or something, plant plants for insects. And dragonflies go away from the water while they're growing and getting ready to breed, and so they need to foraging areas. So you can have sunny areas with plants that attract other insects as their food. And so you can attract dragonflies that way as well.
Yeah, they can fly 30 miles an hour. I don't think we mentioned that. So
Well,
they,
the darners can fly that fast. Yeah.
I think I know the answer. First of all, I got a very nice comment from Alice Smith, who had to drop off early, but she said that the presentation is beautiful and stimulating, and she hopes that you'll show it to schools in Santa Clara County and other Audubon chapters. So that was nice to hear. And from Zoom user again, have dragonflies been preserved? Been preserved from time of dinosaurs, and were they larger than they are now? I think I know the answer to that.
about the size of a gull.
Yeah,
I would have ducked. There was more oxygen then.
right. So that allowed their bodies to grow larger.
Yeah.
They couldn't do now. There's a maximum
A
size.
lot of things were larger back then, and everything has kind of shrunk down.
There are some beautiful fossils of those huge dragonflies. They're not closely related to our present day ones, I believe. Is that true?
They're actually more closely related than a lot of other animals. And then that petal tail has not changed very much over the years. So yeah, they're still structurally they're almost identical.
Where would the dragonflies who visit alpine ponds when it gets hot have migrated to or from?
They actually breed in those alpine ponds. And they're just, I don't know how to describe this. Sandra, help me out.
Well,
here.
so these alpine ponds, especially the ones that freeze over, those are a lot of the species that would have multi-year aquatic nymph stage. So they will grow a few stages and then go back into estivation and then grow a few stages the next year as the water warms up. Yeah, so they're just slower.
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing.
I've seen dragonflies in very high altitudes and near lakes, so I just assumed that they laid their eggs there and then kind of went dormant during the cold weather. But
Yes, some species at high mountain lakes lay their eggs on the lake shore, and then the winter rains wash them into the lake, and they don't hatch till it warms up. So we're a little concerned my battery's low, but I don't think we're going to lose you.
No, we're fine. We got 12%.
Okay.
so, we only have a couple more questions. So what is the lifespan? This is also from Lisa Coe. Does an individual go through multiple egg laying cycles?
So
It's a trick question,
it is.
because if you think of them as flyers, the smaller they are, weeks, the larger they are, maybe 3 months. But you have to think about their aquatic stage.
Right. And their aquatic stage, depending on species and sometimes climate, it can be weeks for the shortest ones to 5, 6, 7 years for the longest ones.
Yeah, 5 years for that petal tail.
Yep. And so that's why when we talk about climate change and ponds drying up, you can imagine that you can lose a whole 5 years worth of dragonflies if that particular pond dries out.
Right, right. Here's a question from Ginger. The petal tail doesn't lay eggs in water, but in damp places. So how do the nymphs live, grow, and survive?
So they actually build burrows, much like crayfish. and they sometimes come out at night and crawl around to find their prey. But what they need is basically seeps with a little bit of moving water that keeps everything nice and clean. And they'll go way deep into the burrow during the day and then come up at night. Yep, where water collects. Yep.
Here's a really educated question from Jan. What can you tell us about beaver pond basket-tail distribution in Santa Clara County? Your first book showed its presence here as a disjunct population in the county relative to more northern California. First occurrence, I thought, was at Ogier Ponds, and I've seen it there. Mm-hmm. It seems to be very common in Joseph D. Grant County Park.
So I think that was the first sighting, and I think we've gotten other sightings. If you have the book right there in front of you, we don't have one right in front of us. You could look at the map there and see what it shows. He's got a whole stack of books is the problem.
I'm looking for beaver pond basket-tail, huh?
So yeah, also when Kathy first wrote her book, we knew very little about the actual distribution. Kathy worked really hard creating these blitzes that we all went on, and I jumped in on helping those in the last few years. And part of the reason for doing that was because we didn't know the ranges of most of these species.
Right, and
this is something that's really recent in knowledge. And then the book in our current book, we also did a predictive map. So if we could tell,
they're way at the south.
Yeah, they're way at the south. If we are seeing movement of species where their range is expanding or moving in different directions. So we did have some of those maps. If you look at iNaturalist and where you can see them and where a map shows, if it's
the website
or the website, it's because we decided that they were going to be there soon. So we wanted people to not think it might not be there just because we hadn't seen it there yet. We think they're going to be there eventually.
Right, that's excellent. iNaturalist is really a good resource for finding these creatures because the pinpoint dots that are on the map. So I really appreciate that.
And for birders, all the sites you guys already know, you guys know that the birds are often found near water. So you already know how to get to those nice water places to get to the dragonflies. And the dragonflies come up about the time that it gets warm and the birds start taking their day naps. But also at the end of the season, as the birds start to migrate out, the dragonfly season continues well into fall. So it really can extend your time outside, both in every day, but also in the season.
Yeah. We have a question which I think a lot of people are probably interested in. Do you have any recommendations for amateur photographers?
Oh, yeah.
I got the one tip about putting a stick in the pond.
Yeah. Yep, or even having other emergent vegetation. And when you see them land on a piece of vegetation, and this would be mostly the skimmers, take a picture, take 2 steps, take a picture, and then if it flies off, take another 2 steps, focus your camera on that spot again, and very likely it will come back. They have favorite perches. And so then you can, now that we have digital cameras, we can delete all the ones that are too far away. And then just keep getting closer and closer and closer. And that would probably be the easiest tip. And then for those species that never land, the professional photographers, when you talk to them, is they figure out that they have these patterns because they're fly back and forth in the same area. So they'll pre-focus their camera right where they're flying through constantly. And then they just click.
Yeah.